Hey y'all, Matt here from the Car Rider Line again, and today we're tackling a question: why in Mark chapter 8 verses 31 through 33, why do we see Jesus telling the apostle Peter, "Get behind me, Satan"? Why does he say this? And let's dive on into the scripture. Mark chapter 8, verses 31 through 33. And I believe there's also a parallel account of this in Matthew 16, if you want to check that one out as well after we talk about it. But the scripture says, "And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, 'Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man.'" So if you've studied the Gospels much, you know that Peter constantly has this problem where he says things, and oftentimes he's getting chastised by Jesus because he's really eager to say things, but they're not always exactly lining up with the plan of Jesus, and he needs to be corrected. If we look immediately before verse 31, we see in verses 27 through 30 of Mark chapter 8, Jesus actually is talking to Peter and the disciples, and he says, "Who am I?" And we think Peter's doing a great job. He just confessed to Jesus that he is the Christ, that he's the Messiah. He's the one that the Jews have been waiting for to come and save his people, to rescue them, to basically to remove the oppression from them, to make them a nation again, to make them great again. If you want to learn more about what the Messiah actually is, we did a video on this previously, so I'm not going to dig too deep into this. But it looks like Peter's doing good. He recognizes that Jesus is the Messiah, but he doesn't exactly understand what the role of the Messiah is. As Peter's teacher, Jesus, is telling him that he's going to have to die and be resurrected again after the third day, Peter's like, no, like that's not what's going on. Like, you're not supposed to die. You're a rabbi. You're the one that's following us. And Jesus immediately rebukes him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." And he does this because unknowingly, because Peter doesn't understand exactly who Jesus is, and that Jesus is here to be a suffering servant, that that part of God's plan is for him to go to the cross, to die on the cross, and die after 3 days. Because Peter doesn't understand this, he's unknowingly speaking for Satan. By trying to interfere with this plan. Peter is speaking the opposite when he says he doesn't want Jesus to go to the cross, and that he doesn't want him to die, and that they're willing to protect him. He's basically standing in the way of God's plan. And this is why Jesus rebukes him and says, "Get behind me, Satan," because Peter's unknowingly speaking for Satan in this passage. And Jesus immediately corrects him, and he says, "For you're not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." So he's telling Peter, hey, you need to focus on God's plan and not your own plan. I know this doesn't make sense to you right now, and this happens to us a lot in our lives. A lot of times God's plan doesn't line up with our plan, or it doesn't make sense until later down the road when we see how God's plan fulfills itself, or ends up, running its course. But it's difficult sometimes to see God's plan over what we think is going to happen or should happen. But this is why Jesus rebukes Peter in this passage. But I hope this has been beneficial. I hope this answers your question. Again, if you want to know more about why we needed a Messiah, we've done a video on this probably about a month ago. Check that out. There's going to be a video, I think it's part 8 of the Ruth study on Friday, so tune in for that. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel so you can get more videos from us. And if you have any topics or questions that you'd like to see answered or discussed, or ideas for future videos, text me or email me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear any kind of feedback, positive or negative or whatever. But until Friday, I love y'all. Blessings.